Today I'm baking marmalade chocolate chip muffins made with ground almonds, and I'll tell you why I've been making these particular muffins a lot recently. First of all, they taste great. We know that chocolate and orange go well together thanks to Jaffa Cakes, Terry's Chocolate Orange and Matchmakers. But the other reason is that these muffins have a lower carb content because a good chunk of the flour gets replaced with ground almonds. When I bake, it's generally because I want something nice to eat, like a treat, often something sweet, but I also want something that's kind of balanced because my husband Cole is type 1 diabetic. So I'm thinking of him, but I'm also thinking of me. If I bake, and sometimes I do bake with white flour and lots of sugar, Cole's blood glucose spikes. With these muffins, his blood sugars will still rise, but more gently, and it's much easier for him to manage. Each muffin contains about 19 to 20 grams of carbs, so they're not classed as low carb. But if I compare them to, say, the Nutella muffins I sometimes bake, one of those alone has 40 grams of carbs. Before we begin, a quick thing about ground almonds. People always ask, will I taste them? I think they're thinking of marzipan. Don't worry, ground almonds have a really subtle, slightly sweet taste. Generally, whatever else you're adding, so in this case, orange zest, marmalade, chocolate, that's what you'll taste. Okay, let's go and make these muffins. I have got 50 grams of white flour, self-raising, but you could use plain, and 50 grams of wholemeal plain flour. You could just use white flour, you could just use wholemeal. I quite like a mix. I'm going to add it to the sugar, 100 grams. And then I've got 150 grams of ground almonds. So ground almonds, you can see that they're one colour, so they're blanched before the skins are taken off. So a lot of the almondy flavour is taken away right there. And then 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And that's it for the dry ingredients. So give them a good mix. It's quite good to whisk the dry ingredients to get them to mix well. So we're always told with muffins not to overmix them, especially when we're working with flour, because that makes the muffins quite tough. I do think at this stage, when you are just mixing dry ingredients, you can afford to mix them well. It's when the wet go into the dry, that's when you need to be careful. All right, so just look for any large lumps. Okay, these are the dry ingredients. I'm going to grate the zest from an orange. I'm using an organic orange because we're using the zest, and the organic oranges are generally unwaxed. I don't want waxed zest going into my muffins. Oh, it smells lovely. Try not to go too far down, otherwise you'll get the pith and that'll be quite bitter. Right, give it another whisk. Okay, now we're mixing wet ingredients. So I've got 2 eggs. I'll add 125 ml of milk. I'm using soya. You can use any milk, any plant milk, dairy. And 75 ml of oil. This is olive oil. Right, I'm going to pour the wet ingredients into the dry. And at this stage, I usually just review the ingredients list to check that I haven't forgotten anything, because I've made a cake before and forgot to put the eggs in and had to get it out of the oven, whisk in the eggs quickly. Okay, right, this is where you don't want to overmix. I remember reading in a cookbook that you should only mix muffins 12 times, 12 stirs. I don't really adhere to that, but I keep it in mind when I'm mixing. Right, add the chocolate chunks. I've got 70% dark chocolate, 50 grams of chunks. You can see there's still some dried bits of flour, ground almonds. That's fine. They'll get mixed in again later. Right, now we divide this into the muffin cases. People often use an ice cream scoop, you know, the squeezy kind, but I just use 2 spoons. I find it easier. I consider it a win if I manage to get all of the batter in the cake cases and none of it on the tin. It never happens. So I would say that these muffins are on the smaller side, but not disappointingly small. But they're not like the muffins you buy in shops that are huge. But I'm fairly greedy and I find these are a good size. I'm just using a regular tablespoon. And it's about 1 big spoon per muffin. Now I'll top them with marmalade. It's about half a teaspoon per muffin. You can add more if you want. But as I want to keep the carbs and sugar on the lower side, I'm not adding loads. And you've already got a lot of flavour, a lot of orange flavour from the orange zest in the batter. I find that this is a good way to use up marmalade because we just don't tend to get through an entire jar very quickly. And I hate wasting food. So baking with it works really well. Right. So I'm using a skewer just to stir the marmalade in a little bit. I used to use cocktail sticks, but that was quite wasteful. I'd then have to throw them away, and a skewer works much better. It doesn't have to be perfect because you'll be adding flaked almonds in a minute. I always think flaked almonds make muffins look really pretty. This is why I love making muffins as well. With cupcakes, you bake them and then you have to wait for them to cool, and then you add, you know, usually a buttercream or something, and it's a lot of effort. With muffins, you decorate them before they go into the oven, and then they're done. Okay, flaked almonds. Quite a lot on that one. This is about 25 grams of flaked almonds. Okay, they are ready to go into the oven. I'm going to take the temperature. You can just use a cake tester or a piece of spaghetti. I'm looking for anything over 90 degrees and hopefully not over 100, because that's the point where water turns to steam and moisture starts to evaporate. But I can tell these are going to be done because of the colour on top. Okay, they're about 94. Great. So you can see that they're not huge. They don't rise loads, but I'll show you the inside now. They're really lovely and moist. All right, time to eat one. They're slightly warm, so they'll be good. The real test is whether they're good on days 2, 3 and 4. These definitely are, but they could do with 10 seconds in the microwave on day 4. I generally freeze half the muffins and eat the rest over 3 or 4 days. They're so good with a cup of tea, mid-morning or mid-afternoon, whenever you just need something like a pick-me-up. Anyway, I hope you try them. The full recipe is on the blog, and leave me a comment if you've got any questions or feedback. Thanks for watching and see you soon. If you really wanted to cut down on the carbs, you could just use ground almonds and no flour. Then each muffin would contain about 15 grams of carbs, which is considered low carb. But the muffins won't rise as much and they won't turn golden brown. They do taste good though. I've made them before, but I prefer a bit of flour.